fine, thank you.
Call this recommending committee meeting of March 4th to order. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
This meeting has been posted in various locations throughout the city. We will move to the first item to consider, Bill number 2008-13. It updates the city's firearm registration requirements to conform to state law, and it's proposed by Bradford R. Jervik, City Attorney.
I will make this presentation unless Brad wants to.
Not the least, but thank you.
Senate Bill 92 during the last session updated the firearms registration requirements of state law. Many sessions ago, state law was made supreme in matters of firearm registration, except in our county with respect to older ordinances. And so we continued our registration requirements during that period of time. In this last session, a bill was passed requiring us to update our ordinances so that a registration of a firearm doesn't have to take place during the first 60 days of residency. And then when someone acquires a pistol, they don't need to register that until 72 hours later. They had that 72-hour period to make that registration. We are conforming our ordinance to state law, even though the law says that if we don't, it's as if we had. So we're just kind of going through the motions to do that and updating our definitions of firearms and pistols, and we recommend approval.
What was the reasoning behind your doing this?
A lot of it had to do with
Legislation.
shows that come into town, and they bring all these firearms in that are not registered, and then people purchase them, and immediately they're out of compliance unless they do it right away, and so it was to accommodate that sort of thing.
You would be able to, for example, go to the gun show at Cashman Field, purchase a gun, and you have it.
I have 60 days to use it before I have to register it.
Well, you'd need to register it within 72 hours.
Now,
Oh, okay then.
But as far as people moving in who bring something with them, they move into the city, they have 60 days to bring that. It's two different things.
I know there's nothing we could do about it because it's a state law. It's
Right.
just I think 60 days is a long time for the way things happen. Do we have anybody else who wanted to add information? Anybody from the audience that wants to participate? All right, we'll move for a motion.
move for due pass.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. We'll now move to the next item, which is Bill number 2008-14. It allows short-term residential rentals in residential districts as a conditional use, proposed by Bradford R. Jervik, City Attorney. Brad.
I think that's what we'll be handling this one. We were directed, my office was directed by the council to come back with an ordinance that would be less drastic than the first ordinance, which completely prohibited short-term rentals, and something that would help regulate problems with short-term residential rentals. This bill represents the product of a lot of work. We've had several meetings with people in the industry who are property managers that are responsible for a number of these properties, learned a lot from them. Had a meeting with, at the same meeting with people who live near houses that are residential rentals on a short-term basis that have had problems, and learned a lot from them. I think the two groups getting together, and now Cheryl Tarantino is here. I don't know if anyone else is in the room from the industry, but based upon those conversations, we're recommending this ordinance today. This ordinance creates a permit process that would allow for the use of an individual's home for short-term residential rental. It divides the rental into two categories: those rentals that are rented by property owners and those that are rented by property managers. What the ordinance says is that if you own your house, whether you're an in-state owner or an out-of-state owner, you can rent it anytime you want. But the rules, if you want to do that, are different than for a property manager. As an owner, you will have to come into the city, the business licensing division, every single time you want to have a short-term rental. You will have to comply with local ordinances, noise regulations, parking regulations, and any other regulations that business services wants. You'll have to provide us with contact information where you can be reached 24 hours a day in case there's a problem with the rental, and you'll have to keep it updated during the course of the rental. And you'll have to do that for each individual rental. So as a property owner, if I want to rent to person A on this weekend, I need a permit. Person B next weekend, I need another permit. Even if it's person B 2 or 3 weekends in a row, a separate rental requires a separate permit. If, on the other hand, a property owner decides to take advantage of a property manager, as defined under the Nevada Revised Statutes, those property managers, because they have more expertise in this area, have dealt with these through contracts for years, they would have an ability to come in and get an annual permit for each home that they rent. And those would be renewable permits. They'd have to come in at the end of each year. Those permits would have the same requirements, though. They comply with city noise regulations, parking regulations, and any of the regulations established by the Business Services Department. Business Services will forward those permits to code enforcement with the city. So we'll have two groups of individuals, both business licensing and code enforcement, that will respond if there's a problem. And if anybody doesn't keep the information updated or isn't responsible for the permit can be suspended or revoked on the spot. So individuals could technically be told to leave that short-term vacation rental because they went there with a permit. They'd also be able to issue citations based upon this, and if they did, fines could be paid. They'd be tried in municipal court. Trying to think if I've left anything else out here. That, I think, is in some substance the compromise that was reached, and I recommend its approval.
And it was gone over thoroughly in a meeting between those who were against short-term rentals and between the industry that felt it should be utilized.
It has been. After the meeting, I sent it to everybody in the industry who was there and all the individual property owners who live next to short-term rentals, and I got comments from everybody. I think for the most part this represents an agreement amongst everybody, but I can't speak for everyone. If there is some disagreement, I've invited Cheryl to be here today, or anybody else who has any question about the language or has any last-minute suggestions, and I'll be glad to address them.
Well, thank you. Do we have members of the audience who would wish to speak? Cheryl? Would you like to come up and give your name and use this mic right here?
Cheryl Tarantino. Is that all you need from me? Not my address or anything?
Yeah, I was going to say have a seat.
Oh. Okay. I just wanted to briefly come up and say that, I was very happy with the way that this came down, and we were able to meet with the homeowners, the council people, and the industry, and we did come up to a compromise, and I feel that everything here is pretty well represented. One gray area I'm seeing is, we had mentioned in one of the meetings, a certain grace period for those who are not in compliance, i.e. in the industry there are some people out there that are not licensed property managers. So they're going to take, I think there should be something along that line that says, you have X amount of time to comply. So it's not just taken out ad infinitum, but it's, within a reasonable amount of time. They have to procure a real estate license as well as property management certificate, and I think the fastest way to do that is maybe you can do it within 30 days would be the fastest. Combined online, etc.
Is there a way you could put that it will go into effect in 30 days?
Exactly. There's a couple of ways to do this, and probably the most simple way would be to say that this ordinance shall take effect and then give a certain number of days. Now, the downside of doing that is that we'll continue on the status quo, which is right now we have no regulations on this. They were repealed at the last meeting. So you can leave that in place and have this go into effect in 30 days, and then all rentals after that period of time would be subject to these rules. It would be hard to say we should take applications and then have to go back in 30 days and find out if you really took the test and you really passed it, since it's a one-year permit. We would not give a one-year permit to someone who didn't have the required NRS certification. And so I think the easier way would be to pick a date when it goes into effect, leave the status quo in place until then.
Do you believe that 30 days is adequate enough time in order to get the proper training, or I'm not sure if it's licensure or permit from the property management side, or should it be 45 or 60 days?
It actually can be done faster than that online these days. I think that allows, I think the people in the industry know this is coming. I think the people that were involved in our discussions are already en route to doing that.
They know it's coming.
They know it's coming. They're already making inroads, and if you want to lengthen that. But then again, what Mr. Jerbick just said, as far as you can't get a permit until you're either the owner of the property or or a licensed property manager. And I think if that's the stipulation, then that pretty much will
If you
dictate.
I was just talking over my shoulder with Councilman Wilson, and by the way, my name is on this bill as a sponsor only because I didn't have a chance to run the final version by both of you before I put it on the agenda. Had I had it to do over again, it would have been listed as co-sponsored by Councilman Tarkanian and Councilman Wilson, who this wouldn't have happened but for your efforts. If you were to just pick a date, and let's just say we're April 1st, and talk that through, what would happen is the status quo would remain in effect until April 1st. Anybody could do whatever they wanted with their homes. On April 1st, there might be some people who are licensed property managers that could immediately take advantage of the law. There might be some who don't pass the test until April 2nd or May 2nd or June 2nd. But that would be their own decision to take it in a timely manner and pass it. The sooner they do, the more economic advantage they have. So I think just picking a date, saying this shall go into effect on this particular date. I think April 1st is a perfectly reasonable date. Some already qualify now, and some will qualify on that date, and some will qualify shortly after that date. But we can't pick a date when we know everybody's going to be qualified. It's really up to the individual to go get that.
And it is doable.
So would
It's
April
totally
1st be reasonable,
doable.
you think, Cheryl?
I think absolutely reasonable. Mhm.
Then we could just put into the ordinance that this ordinance shall go into effect on April 1st, 2008. Is that fair, Al?
I would suggest that we talk about the property manager language going to effect then, because the way I read this ordinance, the suspension ends tomorrow. And the status quo is you can't do it until this goes into effect. So if you put this into effect a month from now, there'll be nothing
Gotcha.
on the books. So I think this should go into effect immediately, but we can write something in about, conditional use regulation number whatever that talks about property manager, shall not go into effect until, or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how to do it.
Or you could just leave it as is and think, let's talking that through for a moment. There are people that qualify the minute this goes into law, which would probably be this weekend when it's published in the paper. And then anybody who wanted to jump on board would have more incentive to take that test quicker and get it over with. So you could just leave it as is, put this whole new law on the books, and then it's up to the individual just to come in and do it. Nothing would prohibit them from coming in immediately and taking the test.
That's true.
And we could just make that known to everybody tomorrow at the council meeting, that the sooner you take the test, get that additional certification on your real estate license, the better, more business opportunity you
Right, then you
have.
can take it. I just wanted to bring it up because we exposed the people in the meeting to the fact that there would be some kind of a timeline that they could come in and to compliance. But other than that, I'm really pleased. I thank all of you for working with us and coming up with a compromise and letting us do our business legally and competently. And I appreciate your time.
And I think some thanks needs to go to the industry too. I know that one of the big compromises that was made on behalf of those who are in this business, not all are licensed property managers, and there was a major concession on behalf of the industry to become licensed property managers to continue in this business and get the privileges that this ordinance would give you above that of a property owner. But I guess with the comments said here today, that I would recommend on behalf of our office a do pass as written, not amended.
And by the way, those who were against the short-term rental, those who met with us, they all got a copy of the final draft, and they all went over it, and anything they did, they called you, and so I checked at the end of last week, and it was fine, too. That's why they're not here. And Councilman Wolfson, would you like to address us?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, but no thank you. I think that the comments so far today are very appropriate, and thank you for your participation. Thank you, Council, for working with me on this, and we'll save some other comments, I think, for tomorrow.
Right. I had a concern, which I mentioned to Councilman Wolfson, about the fact that it seems to me, from what I'm being told by Clark County personnel, that they are going to be working more aggressively in citing those individuals who are renting short-term in the county against what is now the county regulation. And my concern is if that happens and we have a big influx into any of our wards, that might cause a problem because you don't want to lose the balance of residential. And I had discussed maybe adding something, but Councilman Wolfson, well, you could be Doctor of Law, right?
Doctor of Law.
That's right, you are.
You're a
Sorry
doctor,
about that.
Doctor of
Yeah.
Law.
But in any case, Councilman Wolfson has assured me that if we have a problem where there's an inundation of short-term rentals in a neighborhood, which is not what we need to have. We have to have residential as the primary use of a neighborhood, that we will then look to perhaps amending the bill. And we'll give this a time to go the way it is. We'll see what happens. And then if it doesn't work out, if there are problems, then we'll look at amending the bill. And also that we want to have as a matter of policy that every ward council person has the prerogative to ask that as these permits are distributed, that they are notified.
That's
So-
correct, and I indicated to you, Councilwoman, that I will talk to Jim DeFiore in Business Licensing, any council member who wants to be copied on the permits in their ward so they know where they are, so you can take it upon yourself to do whatever you need to do to keep your ward actively involved in this. We'll be glad to do.
And that's what I want on the record, I know for my ward, and it would depend on each ward. Some have no problem, maybe, but for those who have one or an emerging one, it would be something they could do.
We'll do that.
Is there any, did you want to add to that?
Well, thank you.
Okay. I just think this was nice, we could all work together, and I know that some people thought we were never going to make it at where we started, but it did turn out fine, and we all learn. We all learn. And, I have to tell you, I have some trepidation because I'm concerned about residential not staying totally residential. But I understand the situation, and I was convinced that this is something we needed to do. So I'm a little concerned still inside, but I'm ready to go with it, and then we'll see. Okay. Any other comments from the audience? All right, now Councilman Barlow gets to make a motion.
Yes, I would like to move for due pass as written, and that would be my motion at this time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. And where's the champagne?
Sure.
Okay. And then we move to our next item, which is the citizens' participation. Unless I've skipped one. All right, is there anybody here as a citizen who would like to make some comment? Anybody here as a member of the city that would like to make a comment? About anything that's been on the agenda, yes.
Oh, on the
Well,
agenda.
anything that applies to what we've discussed today.
Yeah.
We have to stay focused on subject.
Right.
All right, then the meeting is adjourned. That's tomorrow, yes. Will you take care?
I see. Of that. So I want to
Good job.